Hip-hop was born in NYC in 1973. 50 years later, it's a global force for culture, civil rights, and music. And we're celebrating hip-hop's 50th anniversary with our special edition hip-hop library card. Get yours today at any Queens Public Library location while supplies last. For more information, visit queenslibrary.org/hip-hop50card. Queens Public Library, along with the New York City Department of Education, will provide free lunches for all children under 18 all summer long. Summer meals will be offered Monday through Friday from 1 to 2 p.m. through September 1st. Enrollment is not required and there is no cost. Just drop by. For more information about free summer meals and a list of participating libraries, visit queenslibrary.org. Is your family feeling prepared for back-to-school season? Come to any QPL location from August 28th through September 1st to get a physical copy of our back-to-school guide for the 2023-2024 school year. Our guide features tips for getting your kids back on a sleep schedule and articles about family communication, college readiness, and other topics related to health, happiness, and success during the upcoming school year. When you pick up your guide, be sure to look for other fun and exciting back-to-school giveaways and events at Queens Public Library this fall. For more information, visit queenslibrary.org.
Welcome to Queens Public Library's Talk with Lisa Hurwitz, the director of the feature documentary, The Automat. The Boston Globe proclaims, Hurwitz takes a terrific subject and treats it with undisguised and justified affection. What's most impressive about The Automat is how much ground it covers. The Chicago Tribune writes, The Automat is both a touching farewell and a fond hello again for those old enough to remember the Salisbury steak, creamed spinach, and peach pie behind those little windows of nickel-fed Discovery. Variety states, The Automat taps into so many resonant aspects of what America used to be that to watch it is to be drawn into an enchanting and wistfully profound time-tripping reverie. Hi, I'm Brian Alessandro. I have written for Interview Magazine, Newsday, Pank, Huffington Post, Lambda Literary, The Gay and Lesbian Review, and have recently co-adapted Edmund White's A Boy's Own Story into a graphic novel for Top Shelf Productions. Additionally, I co-edited Fever Spores, the queer reclamation of William S. Burroughs, an anthology of essays and interviews about Burroughs for Rebel Satori Press. I'm also the co-founder and editor-in-chief of the literary journal The New Engagement. My first novel, The Unmentionable Mon, was published in 2015 by Cairn Press, and my first feature film, Afghan Hound, was produced by Marrier Media in 2011. It is currently streaming on Plex Tubi and Amazon. My new novel, Performer Non Grata, was released in April by Rebel Satori Press. Culture Connection, curated by Daniel Zaleski and now in its 10th year at the Queens Public Library, is proud to present international artists from emerging talent to award-winning masters. These disciplines include music, theater, author talks, and film. Now expanding into a virtual format, Culture Connection is currently reaching a global audience. Born and raised in Los Angeles, Lisa Hurwitz grew up in the storied Laurel Canyon neighborhood. She received a liberal arts degree from the Evergreen State College in Olympia, Washington, and went on to work at arts organizations in Washington, including the Olympia Film Society, where she directed the Olympia Film Festival, having started her affiliation there by volunteering as a 35mm projectionist. Lisa helped oversee the Arts Plus Ideas stage at the Strom Jewish Community Center of Greater Seattle and the Seattle Jewish Film Festival. She later moved to New York City, where she worked as a publicist at an Italian public relations firm. Her first feature film, The Automat, premiered at the 2021 Telluride Film Festival. Her next project, a narrative romantic comedy film set in Italy, is currently in development. Thank you so much for joining us, Lisa.
Hi, great to be here. Thanks to Daniel and the Queens Public Library as well.
Yeah, it's our honor.
And to live in Astoria.
Astoria is a great neighborhood. We love it. So I have to ask you, what first made you want to make a documentary feature about The Automat?
Well, I didn't first want to make a documentary feature. It definitely kind of evolved into that. But the kind of short answer is I was a projectionist at my town's, local 1920s movie palace, I was watching a lot of movies, and I was really curious about cafeterias and their history. I was eating a lot in our university's cafeteria, and in our university library, I came across the Horn and Hardart Automat in, just my spare time, wanting to know more about where the school cafeteria came from. So that's kind of where it all started, but it was probably a couple years in that I was like, oh, feature documentary. It was not something immediate.
So it wasn't initially in your mind going to be a feature documentary. What do you think it might have been beyond curiosity? What kind of form would it have taken? Maybe a short film, or did you think about writing it as a book?
It started off as a short I had to make for a college class.
Okay.
And that's sort of what I, was doing. And then I found out all of a sudden I had enough credits to graduate early, and I didn't know what I was going to do. But in my last quarter, I had been working on this short. And
Right.
So since I didn't have anything else to do, I, raised some money to get this going. And so that's the answer.
So for those who don't know what an automat is, can you just give us a brief summary of what it was and how it operated?
So an automat is something, that's one thing. And then there's the Horn and Hardart Automat. But generally speaking, an automat is, and people use it kind of loosely to describe different sorts of systems, but it's sort of any sort of, mechanical system where you use, money in order to retrieve something without there being any human that you're interfacing with. It's all technological. So, even like an Amazon locker, you could call that, an automat. But in the context of this film, automats were these cafes that became popular in Europe in the, late 20th century, and Horn and Hardart at that time was just kind of a lunchroom chain of a few branches, and they were looking for something that was going to help them really take off. And so they heard about this technology that was popular in Germany. One of them went to Germany to check it out, decided that was the thing, brought it back. And the Horn and Hardart Automat was a wall of you would have rows of little cubbies where each cubby would have a different food item. You'd put your coin in a slot, you'd open the window, and you would take the food out. And then over time there were a lot of remodeling of that. The first Horn and Hardart Automat was the exact same machine from Germany that they just, brought over. But over time, they, perfected it to be exactly what they needed. And that's what became the Horn and Hardart Automat. But keep in mind, those machines were just one, piece of the pie, so to speak. The automats were these really large rooms. They were like Art Deco palaces. There were communal tables where people would, sit with folks they didn't know. They were, open early. They were open late. They were stunning. They were welcoming. And they became a part of the fabric of the culture of New York City for about 100 years.
Right. So, and interestingly, it started, you said, in Europe in the late 19th century, and then Horn and Hardart brought it into the United States, New York, particularly in the early 20th century. And it lasted about a century, I guess, here, but it still prevails in places like Tokyo and Seoul. I know Beijing has a lot of versions of them as well, where you can just sort of go in without a person on the other end and just, interact with this cube or cubby and get the food that you want. And that's interesting how the sort of tradition has shifted but continues. I'm interested in Mel Brooks. How did Mel get involved? Was it early on? I know that he composed and performed an original song about the automat for the film. Talk to me about Mel.
This theater that I had been involved with during college in, Olympia, Washington, they would do special events where guests would come in from all around the country to present their work. And one of those people was Carl Gottlieb, the writer of Jaws. And I had been in charge of his hospitality. So we got to know each other a little bit. We became friendly. And a few years later, when I was doing my Kickstarter campaign for the movie, which he saw on social media since we're friends there, he reached out to me and asked if it would be okay if he told his friend Mel Brooks about the project. And so that is how I got connected to him.
And then it's pretty auspicious to, your first feature to have someone like of Mel's caliber kind of be there at the inception or early on, right? And then did he help get some of the other interviewees on board, or did his involvement help open the door to them?
It wasn't the beginning when he came on. It probably was like halfway through, because it was a 7-year from when the first day of like shooting until like the premiere was 7 years. And the first celebrity that became involved was actually Elliot Gould, who was a guest at our theater, and we filmed his interview there in the Capitol Theater in Olympia. And yeah, it's definitely for a first film, it definitely was, just a lot of things were just so fortunate. And, some of it for sure can be credited to like, my tenacity, but sure. A lot of it also just can be credited to the fact that this is a subject matter that is near and dear to so many people.
Yeah, your film really does look at, thematically, I feel like so much of it is about nostalgia, and how we sort of yearn for the past and for bygone cultural, social, or sociocultural places or events that used to keep us together. And the Automat is one such place. You mentioned Horn and Hardart and a little bit of their history. Can you tell us about John Romas?
Yeah.
He's a big part of your film, of course.
Yeah. So John is one of the folks who the film is dedicated to at the very end. One of the other people the film is dedicated to is my godfather, and today is his 97th birthday.
Oh, so wow. Happy birthday to your godfather.
Before the Zoom started, it's not a Zoom, it's a StreamYard, which is really cool. All about competition in the market. So yeah. Like everyone, check out StreamYard.
We like it.
So I'm taking him out for dinner for his 97th birthday, but happy 97th birthday, Herman Brooks.
Birthday. Yeah. And interesting, Mel Brooks is also 97, right?
I know. It's also his 97th this year too. So
wow, fantastic.
John Romas, who very sadly passed away, probably, I think it might have been even before Mel became involved. It was a similar around then. He was the chief engineer of Horn and Hardart, and that entailed him watching out for being responsible for all of the individual Automat units. And, they had so many locations. So that was a lot of machines that he was responsible for. And that was a friendship I forged from the very beginning when I first started researching Automats. I was a college student. During our winter break, I made a trip to New York City across the country. I wanted to see Pee Wee Herman on Broadway, which I did. I wanted to see the Horn and Hardart archive at the New York Public Library, which is incredible. And that's when I also connected. I was using the phone book. At that time, I feel like the phone book, it was online. It was not like but I could find, I was really able to find a lot of people's phone numbers, and I was just calling people, and that's how I got in touch with John. And he ended up lending his collection to the film, after the New York Public Library's collection, probably the next most important collection that is featured prominently in the film was John's, because John saved everything he could, when the dust settled, I think he just took a lot of, it was really curated. He took what was important, and we're in the process right now of, getting, a home for that, in a proper archive. But yeah, now it's so nice. John's kids, because you know, the film airs occasionally on Turner Classic Movies, the TV channel, and then, you know, they live in New Jersey, and they, you know, they're kind of low profile people. And then one, you know, your coworker's like, I saw you yesterday on Turner Classic Movies. So, yeah, it's definitely, I would never have imagined that like the film would be airing one day, you know, on national television. Very cool.
Yeah, it's getting a lot of traction. It was released actually officially 2 years ago, right? It was the late 2021, I believe.
Yes, it premiered in September 2021 at the Telluride Film Festival. I don't understand really why that the way that it works with films is the year goes by the date of the film festival premiere.
Right. However, I noticed that.
However, for a lot of films that will play theatrically like ours did, you know, it really
could be a year later.
Playing everywhere. Yes, it can be a year later. And so then you're kind of stuck with this old date, which makes your film
older than it really is. Yeah.
Yeah. So there is a little bit of that pressure. Like when you, like, there's this people are lenient about 1 year. So like, but you have to do people don't do their theatricals much later than 1 year, because if the year on your film is like 2 years later, then people will be like, oh, that's old. Like, why are you releasing that now? So
it's an interesting situation. I think about it often, and I don't know why they do it that way. But we should say, in addition to Mel Brooks and Elliott Gould, you also interviewed Carl Reiner, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, Colin Powell, the sort of on-again, off-again CEO of Starbucks, whose name escapes me right now.
Howard Schultz.
Howard Schultz, thank you. And it's really moving. It was very moving to watch people like Powell and Ginsburg and Reiner reflect with so much, as we said earlier, nostalgia about their childhoods or their young adulthoods at the Automat. So, and of course, you know, Ginsburg, Reiner, and Powell all passed in the last couple of years. So it's really kind of profound and precious that you were able to capture their reflections. Let's take a look at the trailer before we continue.
Some people just adore martinis. Others love iced tea. In Venice, they all go for Bellinis. But coffee, that's for me. I've tasted every kind of brew at every coffee shop.
As a boy, I was mystified. I became a merchant the day that I was in that Automat.
But this one was the top.
There was all kinds of people, poor people to matrons in furs.
There was nothing like the coffee at the Automat.
Right, the silverware, here come the actors.
It was right near the theaters, and the food was so fresh.
From a silver dolphin spout, the coffee poured right out. Not to mention, at the end, a little spurt of cream. There was nothing like the coffee at the Automat.
I love those little windows that opened, and sometimes what you wanted was missing, and you knocked on the window, waved to the person.
You have to understand they had no latte grande, no quizzical baristas in your way.
Life changes, things change, we all get a little older, but the older you get, the more you reflect back on what came in the beginning, the Horn and Hardits and the Automats of the world.
And for just a shiny nickel, your taste buds you could tickle with that wonderful, magnificent, unbelievable, awesome coffee at the Automat.
Use everything I've said. I'm popular, I'm famous. Make me the spearhead of selling this Michigana documentary.
Michigana, of course. And, you know, you spoke about the Art Deco flourishes and how kind of opulent and ornate and really grand a lot of these Automats by Horn and Hardart were. You know, I think that's something that your film does pay homage to as well. What, you know, why does the Automat still resonate so much with New Yorkers in particular? And Horn and Hardart is, as one of your historians said, a cultural icon. say a little bit more about that and the emotional connection maybe New Yorkers in particular have with it.
Well, this is just a place you would go all the time if you were a New Yorker. So it's like a second home for people. And people who are alive today, they were likely, taken there by, an older relative. So like an aunt or an uncle or a parent or a grandparent. So people associate it. Just think about like me. I'm taking my godfather out to dinner after this. I'm taking him. We have a nostalgic, I'm in Los Angeles right now, which is where I grew up. And we're nostalgic about this old restaurant, Musso and Frank's. And so like if Musso and Frank's if something were ever to happen, we'd be like, we'd be feeling sad about that. But
sure.
We go out to restaurants and, the Automat was just such a, widely visited place that everyone would go to. So I think that's really why. And it also just sort of represents old New York, like a New York that, a lot of people will say is gone. Things have changed so much. It really outlasted so many other things that, were, fell to the wayside. It lasted until the early 90s, which is a lot longer than, many other things.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
And then of course, it really persists and, we never quite can forget it because it just keeps, popping up. I started getting text messages a couple weeks ago because there's a new Marvel series that's coming out with a second season, Loki. And that has, like an Automat featured prominent.
Oh, that's great.
We just can't stop being fixated with it. And we do keep bringing it back in other ways. There's lots of like, food concepts now that are, coined as Automat, but, and I think that's all grand, but nothing really can compare to the Horn and Hardart Automat. Like I'm a loyalist.
Yep, a purist. I get it.
I love the marble. I loved the grandeur. I loved the friendliness, the mixing of people. I am a total idealist, and the Automat is like an idealist's dream.
And you kind of can't really replicate it. It was sort of what it was for its time, and it's not something you can, anything other than the original thing is an ersatz version of it, right? So
there will never be another Horn and Hardart Automat, but there are always, really wonderful things out there to discover. And, I wouldn't be surprised if something like incredible comes in the future. In this process of, touring the film, I've been visiting a lot of libraries, especially in the New York, Long Island, New Jersey, Connecticut, areas. And I don't think I really considered libraries to be like automats until, I started going on this journey. But libraries are nice places where people hang out all day and have really, interesting things going on at all times that really look out for people, and people are, kind to each other there. And they're like community centers. It's so much more than just books. Libraries are really like, they're looking out for people. So
I agree. Yeah. That's a nice observation. Thank you for saying that.
Libraries are kind of, you won't see libraries making headlines like, oh, we're an Automat, like, a dumpling to go restaurant, but they're the new Automat.
You heard it here first. Lisa Hurwitz, director of the Automat, said libraries are the new Automats. Somebody said something in your film, and I'm sorry I can't attribute it correctly to who it was, but they spoke about Automats being this place where you can go. If you were not able to speak English, you could just point to the food that you wanted. And that in and of itself was really significant for a lot of recently immigrated people, for immigrants who could not yet speak English. And that obviously boasted a great appeal for them to feel safe and included, right?
And people actually, aside from just that one person who was interviewed, because I've heard a lot of people's stories and their family stories of their connections to the Automat. This is not a singular experience. This was a lot of people who came to New York. They didn't speak English, and it didn't matter at the Automat because you could see exactly what you were going to get.
Exactly. so you wouldn't have to feel bad about it. Something Mel Brooks said that made me laugh was, he said, you never had to tip at the Automat. I thought that was really funny, because of course, you would be tipping yourself, right? Because you're getting your own food. How did the Automat coincide with women in the workforce? I thought that was a very interesting aspect of your film and of the history.
Yeah. Ironically, though, with the tipping, though, people were, yes, of course. Like there were employees trying to, unionize over many decades at the Automat, and they just kept, failing and failing until finally, slowly, the different groups of employees in the company, because there were different unions. Like if you were a janitor, you'd be in a different union than if you were like a pastry chef. But
right.
It was a company where if you were a busboy, you would be earning. There were different times. Like you were able to make ends meet, working full time, at Horn and Hardart. And I've heard employees and descendants of employees talking to me about that. So it was simpler.
Yeah, that's refreshing to hear, and kind of very germane to what multiple industries are going through right now with regard to unions and fair pay. So tell me a little bit more about women entering the workforce and how that moment in history coincided with, the Automat.
The Automat is also kind of representative about this special moment in U.S. history where women were becoming stenographers in offices, and Manhattan was just, growing vertically. Industry was kind of changing, and with women being office laborers, women needed a place that they could eat that was, appropriate for them. And you get the huge growth of the cafeteria industry in New York City. A lot of these cafeterias went out of business in the 1920s during the Great Depression, and the Automat, was as we say in the film, was a beacon of light during the Great Depression. But, women, it's something we definitely take for granted, when we're thinking about women's rights today, but like, seriously, maybe 125 years ago, like if you were a woman, you were not going out to eat by yourself. And
right.
So, but it's wild. So cafeterias were clean. They were white. They were sterile. They were elegant. They were welcoming. They were just, and then there were women employed there as well. So they really, Horn and Hardart in particular, they understood their demographic, and they wanted, going back to, what we're talking about regarding immigrants, like they wanted that clientele.
Sure.
They were, it wasn't just about like, how can we make the most money, but it also was about, because they were just very kind of, they were faith into their faith, and they wanted to be a very family oriented company always. And they just had, they wore their values on their sleeve. You can see it through their marketing campaigns over the years. It's incredible. They were a company that made so much money in their heyday. They were very successful, but by doing something really wonderful.
And they treated their employees well, which is also really important, right, to underline. Lisa, let's go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I was just going to say, because whenever I do talk about how they treated their employees well, there's always somebody who points out, it is true, they were very late to, unionize. But I don't think, that is black and white. And also, despite the fact that they weren't union, eventually they became union, but they were providing, it's just, you talk to the people who worked there, in all different, I've spoken to people in all different roles, and it wasn't just an image of being like a family oriented, place. They were like the company was really concerned with looking out for their employees and, like creating a good team sort of feeling. And in addition to, just showing up, for work, they also had parties, the annual holiday party for the employees. They had sporting leagues that they would participate in. They had clubs if you were there for 25 years or more. And there were a lot of people in the 25-year club. And they had a fund for employees who needed, financial assistance. Mm-hmm. It was a place where, you could get a family member a job. Trying to remember, there was like one other. Oh yeah, they had this. It didn't make it into the film. I wish we could have figured out a way, but like they had this incredible newsletter company, like an internal company newsletter.
Right.
And, it would update on, people's retirements. I've seen like so many adorable pictures of like, retirement parties over the years, including John's dad. Cause that one, but I've seen a lot of others too.
That's sweet. And when was the first Horn and Hardart Automat opened? Do you know the exact year?
Yes, that would be 1888.
1888. And when did they end up unionizing?
I think that was like in the 60s or 70s. Okay. But it was like it wasn't the whole, I wish we could have, it's just, it's a lot to kind of get into, and we did decide to kind of not get into it. But
sure,
it was slow because there's different unions for the different types of workers, and then on top of that, there's 2 cities, so you've got different. It's just anyways, that was over a long period. But it's at the NYU Labor Archives. Mm-hmm. There's some really cool stuff, images, articles, documents related to the union efforts of Horn and Hardart.
That's good. Yeah. That's great. So Lisa, you sent us a few photos. I'd love to go through a slideshow, and if you can kind of narrate as we manage them and tell us what's going on in each photo. Oh, it actually worked here. Okay, so obviously that's Mel Brooks, and go ahead, you narrate for us.
So this is Mel Brooks in West Los Angeles with the audio technician laying down his track for the vocal track for his original song that's in the film. And this is probably like maybe 2017. What's that?
Yeah.
That is when probably the end of our interview when he's getting ready to leave, and that's probably 2016. I'm guessing. And this is in Beverly Hills. This is in Carl Reiner's living room. So even though Mel recruited Carl to be in the movie, he also recruited Carl to provide the shooting space.
That's great. Did you interview both of them the same day?
We were supposed to interview both. You see, there's 2 chairs side by side.
Yes.
We were supposed to interview them side by side, and Mel was running late, and Carl wanted to, kind of get it done. So we ended up having to very quickly, like in a matter of seconds, like the shots were framed for, 2 people. We had to very quickly, Carl literally just sat down and said, let's start. And I was like, so that's that. And then behind Mel, that was Carl Reiner's assistant Bess behind.
Oh, okay. Yep.
Very helpful. Yep. Yeah.
That's great. Colin Powell.
This is in Alexandria, Virginia, in Colin Powell's then office space that he leased. This is like the conference room. And downstairs was his it was either bright red or bright yellow, but he had like a Corvette and like a special, he had his special parking spot literally right in front of the building, like General Powell
Wow.
And that is him holding up a picture of him as a little boy.
Yeah, that was a great moment.
Yeah.
How long was each interview, Lisa? A couple
They
of
were
hours,
all
an hour?
different. Mel's interview was 54 minutes, and I know that because it's one of our DVD extras. You can watch the whole interview uninterrupted from start to finish. I know the library, I think the library has 3 copies, so you should get on the hold list. It's totally worth it. I'm sorry about the wait, but you'll also, if you want, you can watch the film and turn on my audio commentary, so you can watch the film, and then I come in and out telling like behind the scenes stories about, you know, how things were done and came to be. And then another extra on the DVD available through the Queens Public Library is Mel, after he finally watched the finished film, he recorded an introduction to the film. So you can listen to that too. This is inside of one of the press rooms at the Supreme Court. So that's Justice Ginsburg, and she's holding probably her notes because she came very prepared with like a statement that she read. And this is either like, I think this is 2017. That is John Romas, who I was speaking about earlier, one of the people the film is dedicated to. That was in his home, which was really charming in New Jersey. And that was me arriving and giving him a hug. He was very happy to see me. And while he was alive, I had been, you know, in touch with him a lot, sending him updates. I was sending him like DVDs, like in progress, he could like watch on his TV to like see where we were at with our editing and new footage I was finding. So that was like a fun friendship to, you know, have been able to make.
Seemed like a very genuine and sweet and grateful man.
Yeah. Back in, and then we can see, so back in the back on the left, that's my mom, because she got that interview. Okay. And then in the back right, that is General Powell's assistant, Peggy.
Oh, that's great.
Mm-hmm. And that was the infamous moment in the film where I fix his tie.
Right, back here. Yes, yeah.
If you zoom in, you'll see, I don't know if you can, Eve, are you able to zoom in on the women in the back to see how they're laughing? That's what was going on in the room.
Not sure
probably not. But anyways, you can see they're laughing.
That's good.
Camera people were probably laughing.
That was a great moment in the film. I enjoyed it. I love when you sort of, you know, people break character or break moments and with something very human.
So I did have a still photographer in there for this one, and I was supposed to have the same still photographer come for the Ruth Bader Ginsburg shoot, but at the last minute, that became kind of, and my mom was supposed to come for that shoot too, but it became a very lockdown shoot. It was the same week that Justice Ginsburg had, you know, criticized President Trump for running for office, because this is before he actually won. This was when he kind of entered the race, and so I was just very grateful that my meeting with her didn't get canceled, because she was having such a, you know, terrible, you know, media week. And but one of the repercussions was like, we really could only have like the absolute, you know, essential people in the room. And so in the end, it was just me, the sound recordist, and then her husband, the cinematographer. So it's just the 3 of us.
Also nice, like, you know, in a week where she had to deal with a lot of sort of cynicism and darkness and Trump and all the rest of it, that she was able to sit with you for a little while and reflect nostalgically on this great thing, the Automat. She probably, I think, appreciated getting away from it.
3 or 4 minutes. It was really good. And I'm just so grateful she didn't cancel, because, I mean, that was really lucky. It was probably only I came all the way from, you know, the West Coast. So, and probably also because they knew that like I had just interviewed Colin Powell before her. So I think it was understood that this was a worthy project.
Yes.
And then I also had found, I sent it, I wasn't allowed, her assistant, and unfortunately we don't have a picture with her. If we had a still photographer, if her assistant had allowed us to have a still photographer, we would have a picture showing her assistant in the background as well, because they all have assistants. Right, but yeah, no, I don't know if she was thinking of it in terms of, how can I like make myself feel a little better during this terrible week. She was just trying to, be a decent person. And I did send that picture of her automat where she like points out the hot chocolate machine. I had sent that in advance to her assistant because her assistant said I would not be allowed to show her anything that hadn't already been run by them. So, so she knew that I had really done my research, because I found it's incredible. Like, of all of the pictures that I could have found of her automat, one of the best pictures of all time, like one of our main publicity images, the one that it just shows that there's diversity inside of the automat because there's a nice, mix of people. That's the one that's the inside of her automat.
I see. Okay.
You'll see, cool. She talked about how she did her homework on the balcony.
Right.
That picture included the balcony. So that was, I'm sure when her assistant pulled up that picture for her on the computer, I'm just, that probably did make her smile.
That's cool. And then this here is an actual automat, one of those shelves that you would open, with the doors that you would open, right? Tell us about the mechanics of this.
So this is in upstate New York in the Catskills. And this is Steve Stolman, who's the automat collector in the movie. He's the one who's sitting in front of the laptop. This is his kind of warehouse of his machines that he's kept. And it's a barn, actually. These machines were restored last year because they were on the final episode of The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel.
Oh, wow. That's cool.
Yeah, so if anyone knows anybody that would like to acquire, an automat machine in excellent condition, you can contact Steve at automat.com, or it's theautomat.com, one of the two.
Theautomat.com. Okay.
Yeah, he got the domain, so I couldn't get that one.
These are great vintage photos.
So this, I believe, is Philadelphia, and this is very early. This is early night. I don't even think it's 1910 yet. I don't know. It says 1911, I think, at the top. But
yes,
I'm trying to remember where this came from. This might be from the Philadelphia Department of Records. It's a beautiful one.
Yeah, it's gorgeous.
Yeah. And then this again is Steve's barn. And this is an image. This is how we open and close the film. Not with this exact image, but we open the film in Steve's barn and we close the film in Steve's barn.
Nice bookends, sort of full circle moment. It's a great shot.
I think we call it a throwback. Is that what we call it? A callback. Yeah. A callback. This is inside of a Horn and Hardart in Philadelphia. And this came from Temple University Archives. And I know we can't zoom in, but if we zoomed in, you would see that there's a real mix of Black and white people inside of there and sitting together. And you would see it's packed right now. It's like lunchtime on the busiest day. It is full. And
what year do you think this is, Lisa? You have to approximate.
Maybe this is the 50s or early 60s.
Mm-hmm. Great image.
Maybe more like 50s.
And this is you with the group, right, at Telluride?
Yeah, this is minutes before our world premiere at the Telluride Film Festival. We all met at the theater, and then we sped walked. I don't know if you would say speed walked. And over to this is kind of like the big famous Telluride banner. And we were holding some pictures of people from our team who couldn't make it.
That's great.
We had a nice, our team came and all stayed in a like cabin. You had to take a gondola to get there, and it was a lot of fun. I was also just I didn't get to be with the team. I didn't get to be with the team as much as the team got to be with the team because, well, first of all, I had a concussion while I was there.
Oh no!
The altitude is really high in Telluride. I didn't tell anybody about the concussion until, I mean, my mom knew and the hospital knew, and a lot of we were taking like every year Telluride gets like all the directors and the actors together to take a group photo. I stood up from this group photo, and that's when I went down. And so they saw me. But yeah, it was so much fun. And I tell everyone that after the concussion, that's when I really started to enjoy myself.
Oh my gosh.
I was feeling kind of nervous and uptight, and after that happened, I just kind of loosened up.
It calmed you down.
It was a lot. I mean, Kim, imagine like you're making for years like this thing, and then it's finally done.
Oh no, I get it all too well.
You know, the critics are there watching it, and
it's nerve-wracking. Sure.
The buyers are there watching it.
It's a very stressful event. I know. You want to enjoy it, but you're also a nervous wreck, right?
You know, what does it feel like when you finally when it's done? And I think there was also this worry, like, I don't think I was so worried about it, but, you know, commonly, like, you know, people are like, well, what are you going to do next or whatever? And it's like,
let me get through this first. Yeah.
This ended up keeping me busy for a long time because we've been doing like a really extensive tour of the film. And I really believe in, you know, the opportunity to like talk to audiences about it. And, you know, nowadays movies, you know, they kind of not always, but oftentimes like movies will just get thrown online, and, you know, the streamers will there's new ones coming so fast, you know, the film doesn't really get to be properly, anyways, I'm a little bit old school as you can see from the movie. And, you know, so we did things kind of old school.
Well, I love that about it.
Plus social media, because my gosh, social media helped because we didn't have much of a marketing budget at all. So we were really able to kind of figure out how to use social media to help us. So that was you know, people call the Automat a great equalizer. Social media was like a great equalizer for our film. Sure,
it could be it's a very democratic thing, social media. So
that's a little too democratic.
Yeah.
People on Twitter were a little mean. Not gonna lie.
I'm sorry. There is always that too, right? So we spoke a lot about New York, but there was also an Automat sort of a cultural movement in Philadelphia with John Horn. Can you talk to us a little bit about that and John Horn?
So the Joe Horn, he didn't really like to go to, you know, he decided, I'm going to do the Philadelphia side of the business. Frank Hardart's going to, you know, do the New York part of the business. And they actually were two different companies, you know, tied by, but people didn't necessarily realize that they were two separate companies. You know, the food there were a lot of similarities between the two. Some of the recipes would slightly differ because they would adjust it to the tastes of the cities. But Joe Horn, he actually he didn't have any children of his own. And so, you know, interestingly, like if you were to like look at the names of the executives of the company in later years, you don't see the Horn name, you see the Hardart name.
Right.
But actually Frank Hardart died I think it was 1919. So then Joe Horn he then took over New York again when Frank Hardart died. But yes.
So many things I'm curious about. Like, I guess let's start with, what was the quality assurance process like to ensure that the food that these Automats were serving were of quality, and, safe to consume. And tell me about that. And then also, if we could talk a bit about the affordability for customers, particularly during the Great Depression.
So they had a kind of old school way of assuring, the quality, which was a tasting table. So the only photos I've seen of the tasting table, it was all, men sitting around the table, and they literally would just every morning they would just taste the food and decide if it was correct. And I mean, that was the quality assurance. I don't know so much like because they did also for a while sell their food in like grocery stores, and they're day old. They would have Horn and Hardart retail stores too, where like you wouldn't go there to eat, but you could go there to buy the Horn and Hardart products. And I would assume that those things were made the same way and that they got tasted the same way. But this is part of why they didn't survive, is that they were a little too kind of naive and old school, and they just didn't kind of foresee how the business was going to change.
Right. And your film does sort of get into that, and we're going to talk about that in a second. Do you know what the height of the Automat's daily volume was? How many people approximately would visit one on any given day?
It was between all of their different locations. Oh gosh. Keep in mind, like, I'm going to use the 2021 number to my advantage. I'm saying, the film came out in 2021. I remember all the there were definitely ads that we saw that said, several 100,000 people a day between all their locations. So they were feeding a lot of people every day. I want to also try to, because for anyone who's watching that actually, hasn't seen the film yet, we're having a screening coming up pretty soon at another public library in the area. August. Okay, so on Tuesday, August 29th at the Montclair Public Library branch, at 6 p.m., we're going to have a screening of the film with me there to do a Q&A in person. So you can meet me. And then we'll be on Long Island at the West Hempstead Public Library. Ooh, it just, when we're talking about like, parts of the film, I'm like, everyone should just, who wants to see it. And that, okay, so on Sunday, October 15th, I think it's at 1 or 2 p.m. and I'll be there too. So that's October 15th at the West Hempstead Public Library.
Great. Montclair is only 20 minutes from me. I'm actually based in New Jersey, so I can come swing by and meet you in person.
Oh, that'd be so fun.
Yeah, I love that. So tell us about the symbolic significance of the nickel, the 5-cent cup of coffee, and how when that changed, it actually began to hurt the Automat. People took offense to that on some level.
People were sort of that word when you are not protesting. They were like boycotting the Automat a little bit. I mean, there was nobody with. I haven't seen any pictures of people with signs, pacing around saying, "Lower the coffee," but their sales dropped like crazy when the price of the coffee was raised from 5 to 10 cents. And that jump was because the Automat machines couldn't take pennies. So they needed to raise the price because they were losing a lot of money because they were, giving the coffee away for so cheap. But the nickel, I think it was the changing in New York of, this inflation where in New York, a lot of things used to cost a nickel, the subway and, a phone call. So a cup of coffee, it was just a sign of like the times changing. And people,
right.
Getting that 5-cent cup of coffee, it was just something that everybody, really
relied
loved.
on. Yeah, sure. So the last Automat closed in 1991. Is that correct? So the first one was like 1898, you said, so almost 100 years, right? Just a few years. 1888, so 103 years. Why and how did it end? What was going on internally at Horn and Hardart in terms of vision and location, and culturally with changing interests?
So the company was having a lot of financial problems, and this was sort of the last remaining automat for a long time. It was in a really, good location. It was across the street from Grand Central. Today, I believe it is it see, here's the thing. For this whole time, it had been the Gap. And, the last few times I've walked past it, I think it's owned by the same company as the Gap. If it's Ann Taylor, I can't remember what it is, but it's from the same ownership. So now there's a different name there. But it was being used a lot for like being rented out for parties.
A lot of the automats too were converted into like Burger Kings and Arby's and other fast food eateries. Is that right?
Yes. In the end, that is what happened. So this one was kind of just holding on by a thread for a long time, but I think they probably needed to cash out on that. And
Sure.
Yeah.
I have a few more questions left for Lisa, but I should tell our viewers we are taking questions, so please start sending them in for her. And while we wait for those to come in, Lisa, there's a really great quote. There were two. I guess they were marketing slogans. It's not fancy, but it's good, and you can't eat atmosphere. They were launched towards the end of the automat's time to suggest that the food will always be good, right? Even if it's not fine dining. Can you speak to that?
It's not fancy, but it's good. Yes. And then less work for mother. I'm trying to remember. Somebody told me of like no, I have a friend who works for, sorry, I shouldn't get anybody into, okay, here. Arm & Hammer, for one of their, I think it's for their laundry products. Mm-hmm. They have internally, like they have these slogans that they use that are all she and her. Mm-hmm. I'm being so bad right now. And I'm like, seriously? Like, you guys have your slogans for your laundry products are she and her? But anyways, so I guess nowadays we have those slogans still. But okay. I'm not right at the moment. I'm not remembering any other slogans.
That's okay. No, I love that they sort of tried to, sell this message of what it was about in a way that was very sort of modest and humble. And towards the end, I think it's especially poignant. We actually have two questions and a statement. Congratulations on your new documentary, Ms. Hurwitz. What were some of the biggest surprises for you in making this film? Secondly, can you make a statement about the recent rash of book bans in the USA? Do you see this impacting the film industry? Thank you.
That is a very interesting, do the book bans impact the film industry? I never thought about that. I'm curious if you have any thoughts on that, maybe you can type that into the chat, and then because I'm curious to know what you think, because I'd never considered that before. But kind of the biggest surprises in making the film, I mean, there's the obvious surprise, which is that like we were able to finish it and it turned out, well, and it ended up having all these celebrities in it. And, who would have thought? I mean, I think because this was, this started in a college class. So like sometimes, but there's been a few times where like some of my old college classmates have reached out and they've been like, what the heck, Lisa? Like your little thing turned into, it's on HBO Max. And I'm like, oh, it's crazy.
Yep. That's where I watched it, actually. It was on HBO Max. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's a surprise. The Howard Schultz piece was a surprise for me because, we were finishing up when I learned about his personal connection. Marianne Hardart, the author of the coffee table book, The Automat, she had asked me if I knew about the connection. I said, what are you talking about? And she showed me on the dedication page of one of Howard Schultz's autobiographies, there's a photo of the automat and a dedication to the automat. And so as soon as I saw that, I'm like, oh my gosh, I need to interview him so, he can talk about how the automat was an inspiration for him. Mm-hmm. And actually, I was at a screening, I think at the Seaford Public Library 2 weeks ago, and there was somebody who came up to me at the end of the screening. When you watch the movie, you'll see that Howard Schultz talks about how his Aunt Shirley his Aunt Shirley in Brooklyn took him to the automat. Mm-hmm. And so one of Howard Schultz's kind of classmates from back then who knew Aunt Shirley, she came over to me and she's like, I knew Aunt Shirley.
Wow, that's nice.
And so it was just it was like, she's like, I had no idea Aunt Shirley was going to be, mentioned. I remember her really well. So that was funny. One time we had a screening at Cinema Arts in Huntington.
Mm-hmm. I love that theater. Yep.
Yeah, it's a great theater. And some cousins of Mel Brooks were there unexpectedly. I think his first cousin. So they were older. So it's been fun. All the surprise guests at screenings.
That's fun. Here's another question or statement. My favorite place to go out to eat in the 40s and 50s. My mom would take me and my brother on the subway from Queens into Manhattan. We would eat at the Automat and see the Rockettes. It was a fun experience and something I will never forget. That's great. Thank you, Eileen. And then from Terry Scutra, we have, I love this film. Great job. That's very nice.
Thank
and a question. Do you think that the Automat concept could ever be revived and operationalized? From Anne Marie.
Well, the person who owns Horn and Hardart today, mm-hmm. he is trying to do this, and he wants to open up a Art Deco style automat in Philadelphia. He wants to attract, millennials. He wants it to be a cool place to go. And I wish him all the best of, luck. I mean, people are doing the automat concept today successfully. And,
sure.
But I'm kind of a stickler for, there's got to be that community aspect.
Yes.
That's the difference between an automat and the Horn and Hardart automat, because Horn and Hardart automat was quality. It was friendliness, and with the economics of it, Mel Brooks talks about how with the economics of the world today, it's so expensive to make something like that happen.
No. The other thing is you're going to have to get everybody to put their phones down and close their laptops and actually talk to each other. And so that's a challenge.
Sometimes I go into a cafe or a restaurant that'll say no cell phones, no laptops,
which is great. Yeah, that's nice.
I went to a show at the Comedy Cellar the other night, and they make you lock seal up your cell phones inside of shipping envelopes.
Oh, all right. So, maybe this is a new trend. Hopefully this will catch fire.
You walk into the office, you have to hand them your phone.
I love it. The film is The Automat. Lisa Hurwitz is the director. Lisa, thank you so much for talking with me this evening. And thank you everybody for watching.
Bye, Ryan. Bye, everyone.
Take care, everyone. Bye, everyone. Have a good weekend.